Hey guys, welcome yet again to yet another home range poultry video. Now today we are in a very special place, and this place is called the hatchery. Now this is basically where we produce chicks from, and in today's video I specifically want to discuss this. Now what is this? This is the Chinese incubators. On today's video I want to help you be able to use these Chinese incubators to actually get a very high hatch rate with your eggs. So on today's video guys, I'm going to take you guys through exactly the setting for this machine. You know, how do you set each one of these things? How do you actually manage it from the time that you get the machine to the time that you actually hatch the chicks? So on today's video, I'm going to focus on this main machine that we have here. Now this machine that we have here is actually called as an incubator. Now an incubator is a machine where you actually keep the eggs from day 1 to day 21. So in this particular case, you find that from day 1 to day 18, the eggs are put in a particular section, which we call the setting section. And then from day 18 to day 21, they are moved to a lower part, which we usually call the hatching section. I want to show you some of the settings that we use, how you actually set this controller, and based on where you are, what kind of conditions and settings that will actually be able to work for your place to help you be able to get a high hatch rate. Good. So let's start off. So what you're seeing here guys is the controller. It's actually the most important part of your incubator, because this is more of the brain of the incubator. This is because you find that the controller is where you input all the settings and all the parameters that you need to set the machine. For example, you want your machine to start heating at a particular point when the temperature reaches a particular point. So in such a case, you have to input that setting here to make sure that the machine does exactly that. Now sometimes it so happens that the machine may actually overheat for one reason or the other. Now it is on this controller again where you will come and put the setting to tell the machine that when the temperature reaches a particular high point, then you should start opening up the ventilation so that the temperature can actually reduce. Now let me start off showing you the basics part of the controller. You see this top part? Now the top line here actually tells you what is the actual reading inside the machine. So for example, for our case here, on this controller, first of all, the type of controller that we use here is an XMD18D controller. Now on this particular controller, the top part tells you the actual reading in the machine. For example, right now the reading in the machine is telling us is 37.7, and the second bit here tells you what is the actual humidity inside the machine, and as you can see it's pretty low, it's about 21%. Now on the lower section, the second line here, the place you're seeing has a smaller digit. Now this part tells you the actual setting which you want your incubator to be able to achieve. So in this case, you set hours to make sure that it achieves 37.6 degrees. So what happens with the machine, it will always be struggling to maintain this temperature. So you will notice that before we were saying the temperature was at 37.7, but now what has happened is that the machine has ventilated, it has opened up, and it has reduced that temperature from 37.7 to 37.6. Okay, again, it's exactly what is actually happening. So it reduces, and the ventilation actually closes up. Now the second part on the lower side, where you're seeing the 58, this is actually the humidity which we want the machine to achieve. So what happens inside the incubator is that once you input this setting here, the machine has a water pan at the bottom with a heating element, which when the humidity drops, as is the case right now, is at 22%. So what is going to happen is that the machine will start boiling that water inside that water reservoir to increase the humidity in the machine through the steam that it actually produces, to raise it to about 58%. Now the other part of the incubator obviously is the power switch. This switches it on and off. That's off, that's on. So it's a very important switch, because in case there are any issues with your machine, the first thing that you need to do is switch it off. Now the other button that you see here written fan, this is actually the button for you to switch on the circulating fan. Now inside the machine there's a huge fan that we call the circulating fan, that is actually able to help make sure that the temperature and the humidity inside the machine keeps being distributed all over, to make sure that there are no parts which are too hot or too cold. So it's called a circulating fan. You need to make sure that the fan is always on all the time. Now the last button here obviously is for light, and as you can see I've switched on the light and it's come on. Okay, now the whole purpose of this light obviously is, that sometimes you want to check inside what is the progress of the eggs, is the egg turning mechanism working. So what you need to do is actually switch on this button so that you're able to have the light inside. Now before you start off, you need to set your incubator to read at a particular temperature or humidity. Now for my case, let's say for instance we want to operate this incubator at a temperature of, let's say, 38 degrees. So what do? We'll just come and press this set button. It will start blinking PP up here, and then using these up and down arrows, we can increase the temperature to whatever we want. So we want 38 degrees, that's what we've done. We'll come and press the OK button to now be able to go to setting the humidity parameters. And in this case, again, we go up or down. So let's say we want to use a humidity of about 62%. So we just increase it to 62% and okay. And just like that, voila, the temperature and the humidity have already been set. So the machine now will continue consistently struggle and work on increasing the temperature to 38.0 and the humidity to 62%. Now, of course, there are other in-detail settings which you need to know about. You know, how do you tell the machine when the temperature reaches this level, it needs to open up, all those ones. Now, those ones are usually accessed. We usually call them the advanced settings. And you really discourage from touching the advanced settings unless you have some experience with operating this controller. Because once you mess up the advanced settings, then I'm sorry, the incubator is not going to get anything. So, for you, just always make sure that you use the machine often in the default setting that you get, and of course after experience you'll be able to understand how to actually increase or reduce some of that temperature and the humidity. Now the other part that I want to look at is the internal of the incubator. What exactly is inside, and you know, how exactly does it work and all that. So guys, let's open up the machine and check inside, and I will explain to you every single part, what it does and what its function is. So guys, as you can see, this is an incubator. The capacity of this incubator is about 5,200. Actually, to be exact, is 5,280. Now, what you notice up here is that we have this regulator, and this is actually the regulator for the fan inside. Now, you notice that initially, the fan inside, which is what you're seeing running at the back there. Now, you often find that sometimes that fan may actually run too fast, so you need to reduce that speed sometimes so that there's no wind that is created inside the machine, and that we do by regulating here, either moving it fast or moving it slow, and that's why we put that reading there. So for this set, let's switch it on so that you actually see how it actually operates. Now, so right now what I am doing by pressing this up button is I want the egg turning mechanism that you can see up here, up there. I want that egg turning mechanism to start turning the trays, and as you can see, the setter section of the trays have started turning by me pressing that up button. It gets to the point which you're okay with. For example, now I wanted it to go to a level position, so once it gets to the level position, as you can see, I will come and press again the up button to stop it. Now inside here, there's one prong that you can see, and this grayish element here. Now the prong that you're seeing, that's a temperature sensor, and the gray box that you're seeing, that's a humidity sensor. Now on your machine, the one thing that you must make sure that you do is that the humidity sensor must always be pointing down towards the what? Towards the water reservoir. So down there is the water reservoir, okay? And inside that water reservoir, you can see that there's actually a floater inside. So that floater controls the water that actually comes in and goes out. That's what you're seeing there. It's always very important that before you switch on your machine, you make sure that actually that water reservoir always has water in it. So don't switch on the machine before you top up the water inside there, because if you do that, there's a heating element inside and it always gets burnt whenever you operate the machine without having the water inside. Now the other part that I want to discuss is obviously the egg turning system. Now this egg turning system that you're seeing is where from day 1 to day 18 you usually come and you place your eggs. Now once you do that, the system works in such a way that after every 1 hour, that's the default setting, after 1 hour the system will always want to turn the eggs. And right now I've pressed the up button again so that you can actually be able to see how the machine actually starts tilting the eggs. Now it usually does that, it usually turns the eggs at an angle of 45 degrees. So once the eggs get to a point of about 45 degrees, the machine itself will automatically shut down the system, and it will stop by itself. So that action always keeps happening every 45 minutes. So after about 1 hour, or 45 minutes or 1 hour, what will happen is that the machine now will start turning the eggs to the other side. This motion keeps on happening every 1 hour for the entire 18 days. That's from day 1 to day 18. Let's turn to the lower part of the machine. Now what you see down here are actually what we call the hatcher section. And on the hatcher section, it usually contains these, what we call the hatching baskets. Now you usually move eggs from the upper section, the setter section, into the hatcher section on day 18. Of course, there's a process that is usually called candling, where you're actually supposed to check the inside of the egg before you move them from the top section to the lower section to make sure that the eggs you move actually contains a chick inside. And of course, all these things, the details of actually operating the machine and all that, we usually cover into great detail during the training days. So remember the basic, guys. For you to actually get a high hatch rate with your machine, the things that you actually need to do is make sure that the water reservoir down there has water. Okay, you need to make sure that your sensors are working, and you need to make sure that you put the correct setting on your machine based on where you are and what setting that you want. Now for me, I've actually noticed that for me what I use is a temperature of 37.8 and a humidity of about 62. Okay, now this is the temperature and the humidity that I use from day 1 to day 18. However, from day 18 to day 21, we have to raise the humidity settings, and we usually come and change it on day 18 and raise it up to 73%. Okay, there you go. So from day 18 to day 21, the temperature now will be 37.8, but a humidity of 73%. And when you do that, guys, always remember that even after the eggs hatch, do not open your machine on day 21, because often the chicks actually need time, you know, to really dry up and become all fluffy, like the way you can see on these chicks. Yeah, you can see. So those chicks, as you can see, inside the hatcher have actually hatched, and some of them have already started walking around. Now that's how you want chicks. Now that takes almost about 2 more days, or at least 24 more hours after the 21 day. That tells you that the eggs will actually be on day 22 for them to get all fluffy, and you can remove them from the hatcher. So guys, as you can see, this is how, once you load up the setter trays and the eggs are supposed to be placed on the setter section. And once you do that, and you make sure that all the eggs are in the correct position, so that when the machine tilts, when the egg turning system tilts, the eggs don't fall off, then you're good to go. So all you need to do is lock up your machine, make sure that your machine is tightly sealed, because any leakage may cause the temperature in the machine not to be stable. And once you do that, switch her on, and there you go. You're all set to start your countdown.